We can tell when our people are scared. We can tell when our people are stressed. We can tell when their anxiety is hitting the roof, right? And so I think that's where we want to start with this conversation today, right? Is if that is you and you are out there experiencing some of that upheaval emotionally, the starting point is just to get curious in regards to what's coming up. And we always come at this through the doorway of why is this showing up for me? Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, the Legacy Edition, where conscious leaders unite to unlock their highest potential so collectively we can change the way the game is being played. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Podcast, changing the way this game is being played. Tracey, Alan, and I are back in this podcast studio, and we are so fired up to bring you today's one-on-one riff. We have been putting our finger on this pulse. I know we've been talking about conscious leadership as a theme here since the summertime. And yeah, one of the things that we have really been exploring as a through line is just really noticing the intensity that was brewing all summer. And boy, oh boy, did that intensity ever crash like a wave in September. We had a couple eclipses that definitely amplified that intensity. And here we are now in October. And I am just dying to hear from you, Trace, because you are out in those corporate trenches day in and day out. And I'm just curious if that intensity is still as ripe as we were seeing it to be in September. If all of that's starting to, ground down now that we've been talking about leadership in a conscious way, what are you noticing out there in the corporate ethers with your people right now?
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this previously, right? We were heading into Q4 now. Pressure is real and on. There's lots of uncertainty. The job market is tough, right? There's lots of changes, political, that's still ongoing in the US. We're still feeling some of that in Canada, right? When we talk about tariffs. So I'm seeing tons of uncertainty in terms of like what's happening in some of the corporate worlds. If you read even the Global Mail, you'll see lots of changes happening in the markets and yes, they're happening at the corporate level, but let's be honest, those corporations are built with people. And at the end of the day, the people are feeling that, right? That uncertainty is coming through big and strong for them. I would say that the biggest challenge I see right now, and I've been doing a lot of checking in with my people in terms of understanding what they're feeling. And I know we have our own circumstances in the company I'm in, but people are really, really kind of suffering with the uncertainty. And a lot of this is, driven by change, which is all natural in big corp, right? It's very natural that you have lots of changes. That usually means good things, by the way, but it's hard for high performers to be able to see that line of sight where everything is good and we are, we're going to come out on the other end. So I've been spending actually the last week, I would say last couple of weeks, helping some of my people see, and help them understand how they can really get aligned and what is it that these changes are coming, how is it going to impact them, but really getting them focused on themselves and self-leadership, right? Bring them back to why they're here, what's their impact, helping them understand, change is often very good, but it's because we can't predict it that we get so caught up in terms of like the uncertainty and then we lose our way. So really try and help them get really focused on why they're here. And one of the biggest things, as a leader, and I'm preaching this to my team on a regular, is we need to deliver what we need to deliver. All the changes that are happening around us are things that we can't control. And we really need to stay in our power, on our mission, and deliver what we need to do. Because that stuff is going to happen no matter what. So for us to get caught up in that is just distracting us from our jobs. So for me, I think that's one of the really big things right now that we're really trying to help our people with is like, we have a lot to do. We have a lot to deliver. how do we get them back into their own power, understanding why they're here, what's their purpose, and then helping them understand to trust the process that's ahead of us. So that's, I think it is real. The changes, the uncertainty is real. And I think helping, and I think that's what we want to talk about today, is helping our people kind of get anchored in to be able to be grounded through this tough, kind of rough waters we're going to see over the next few months, and really get focused on themselves. And I think that's what, you're going to be able to help us a little bit with in terms of uncovering and where to start with that, right? Where do we start? Because it's a long process, and I think you and I talk about this because I've done a lot of work with you, so I've done the work, so it's a little easier for me now to be able to help my people, but really, really important stuff to do, and it's a lot of work, and sometimes we just don't know where to begin.
Yeah, well, I definitely am seeing the same thing in them trenches as I'm working with my leaders day in and day out. And yeah, I think symptomology wise, that's always my entry point, just like it's your entry point, meeting your people where they're at, putting your finger on that pulse, right? Because where those red flag emotions are showing up on the play viscerally, we can tell when our people are scared. We can tell when our people are stressed. We can tell when their anxiety is hitting the roof, right? And so I think that's where we want to start with this conversation today, right? Is if that is you and you are out there experiencing some of that upheaval emotionally, the starting point is just to get curious in regards to what's coming up. And we always come at this through the doorway of why is this showing up for me? Those of us that value growth, right? The high performance mindset, we trust that adversity is always the opportunity for growth, just dressed up and disguised as that. But yeah, I think it's essential for us to understand that if we are in the disruption and we are being taken out of our resiliency because of our focus being taken onto all those things that we can't control, well, then it's time to get really curious in terms of what types of belief systems you're running on back there, right? That might be coming up to the surface of your conscious mind so that you can really understand like how your GPS is orienting in this storm. As high performers, we talk a lot about the importance of being consciously at that helm, right? Which means that we are in self-leadership, means that we're seeing ourselves as the authority, meaning that we take responsibility for whatever is showing up and whatever that is eliciting within us as a response or a reaction. And yeah, ultimately, if we can't get grounded because our amygdala is right triggered into the sympathetic overdrive, then it's because there's some hardwiring back here that is trying to reveal itself, right? If we're stuck in our reactivity in terms of, the stress response, it means that our brain is trying to get our attention in terms of where our value system lies, right? In terms of how our brain is filtering what all of this means. And so, yeah, this is the thing that we wanted to talk about today and pull apart, right? Because the reality of a lot of the folks that you work with and a lot of the folks that I work with is that they're running on the high achiever mindset. And ultimately, that is a mindset that really comes from what's known as a social self-concept, right? This means that our value system was hardwired based on who we needed to become in order to gain that social acceptance and belonging in the tribe, meaning that we had to maladapt in terms of who we showed up to be in the world, right? We had to start to value things like people pleasing, as an example. We've talked about that one a lot on the show before. We had to learn to value that other people being happy with our performance at all times, right, was the most important thing. Again, coming from a space and place of maladaptation, which means that our brain really was absorbing all of these types of outside in value systems in a time and a space and a place where our values were being downloaded from our environment. When I bring up people pleasing and as an example, I know this is something that you and I both had to unravel, right? In our backstories. It's a pretty classically high achieving one, right? This is how we're trying to control our need for that external validation as a supplement for our need for self-worth, right? Meaning that as high achieving children, we had models in our environment that showed us that was the most important thing. And because our models were displaying that keeping everybody happy with us at all times was the most important thing, we downloaded that as like a need for our survival, that type of maladaptation, right? We needed to actually go out into the world and make that our responsibility, right? Or else we wouldn't be seen as good enough. And we've talked about the importance of, that self-worth is like oxygen. If you don't have it, like that's it, right? If your brain doesn't know what your value is, and I think this is a lot of what we're seeing unravel in a lot of our high achievers experience right now. If they've gone a lifetime of giving that authority to the world, giving the world the power to tell us how good or not good we're being that day. Another version of this that we see is that high achievers really value perfectionism, right? So we really value showing up every day and having all the answers at all times and everything figured out. Well, you can certainly see why that adult still running on those types of extrinsic values that were, again, made to be used during a time and a space and a place where you had to survive in those ways socially so that you actually could maladaptively stay safe socially and get those needs met. But fast forward the game tape to what's going on in 2025, and I want us to all get curious in terms of how is that serving us during a disruption? Because there's no way that if things are starting to change, right, and there's uncertainty opening up in terms of your role or your career trajectory, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in terms of the predictability of you being able to sustain that. And again, if your whole identity, your self-concept stands on this type of inauthentic ground in terms of this isn't really who you are. This is who you needed to become to stay safe in a time and a space where you did not have the capacity to do that on your own. You weren't an adult yet. But if that's happening now in real time and you're an adult, then I think that's the call and the invitation for you to see that that is in fact showing up for you. Because it's actually helping you step back to the helm and consider why that is still a value that is driving this bus. At the end of the day, both of those freaking value systems we know are going to create this level of disruption in your nervous system, in your being, because that was never meant to be long-term value system for driving the bus successfully towards your purpose and your legacy. Again, that was supposed to be just enough to get you out of Dodge into adulthood, where you could learn to step back and start to consciously really discern what actually is your value system. This is, I think, the call and the invitation into really starting to cultivate, an authentic self-concept where you actually can make decisions in alignment with the truth of who you really are in terms of that which is most meaningful and important to you. So if it's no longer the world's responsibility to be the authority telling you where to go and what to do with your time, energy, money, and focus, and it is now yours, like Cav and I were talking about 2 weeks ago on the podcast, I think that's what we're trying to inspire us all to really realize, is that that's your opportunity now to step into your power with it. That's your opportunity now to really start to take control of architecting a GPS that is actually going to help you govern decisions that are in alignment with that which is most meaningful and important to you. And so I want to hear from you, Trace, in terms of how you're helping your people do that type of work. And then let's talk about it in terms of how we actually start to capitalize on the disruption and capitalize on this opportunity, not only for growth, but adaptation in a way that is going to be a sustainable track towards your purpose and your legacy.
Yeah. And I think just for our guests, because you talked about it a few times around what we maladaptively, did, I think maybe put a little context around why that is, and maybe talk a little bit about the age that this happens at, because I think not everybody might not be like understanding that this is not like yesterday. This is when you were very young, and no one's fault, because every parent has their own story, and they all tried to do the best they could, but we don't go back that far, and we don't think of it that way. So maybe just give a little bit of context, and then I'll go into the other question. But can you just give a little bit of like what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, I think our self-concept, also known as our identity, is hardwired into our belief systems back here, right? Where it lives in our mindset pre-10 years old for the most part. This is where we need to figure out, especially once we start leaving the home and going to school and we start interacting with peers and teachers outside of our home environment. We have to figure out who we need to be when we show up so that we can stay safe in those types of really uncertain situations. This is the origin story of how we learn to navigate uncertainty, in fact, and get our needs met, because that's the brain's job. It's meant to keep us safe and alive. And the way it does that is by filtering our experiences and creating meaning out of those experiences. Again, most of which is going down and being architected into this blueprint known as your identity, your self-concept, pre-10 years old. And so, of course, there's no such thing as the perfect parent. There's definitely no such thing as like the perfect, idyllic, kindergarten environment. These environments are full of disruption. Our parents are doing the best that they can, but they didn't have this type of stuff. They didn't do this type of inner work for the most part, right? So the reality is that most of us grew up with unconscious leaders that weren't necessarily at the helm, leaders that were just perpetuating whatever went down pre-10 years old in their self-concept, right? And how their brain was able to maladaptively stay safe in whatever uncertainty they experienced. But I think it's really important to understand how unconscious we are as children pre-10 years old. We are in a sponge-like state. So we're just absorbing all of what we're picking up on in our environments. We are literally downloading that into the hard drive back here. And that ultimately is why, again, if you're feeling disrupted right now, this is an incredible opportunity for you to get curious and come to this table and really start to do this inner work. Because if you don't go through that deconditioning machine, that yes, is always going to be painful and turbulent. I know you and I, we joke about this saying, I wish high achievers came whistling through the door upstream when there was no disruption, because then it'd be a little easier to access the depths that we need to access to really rehardwire these belief systems and value systems. But ultimately, we believe that this being put in the chokehold, hitting the brick wall or the glass ceiling, right? Because you don't know where to go from here. All of that pain is acting as a catalyst. It's trying to catalyze all that untapped potential in you. Because when you're thinking about where to go from here in terms of making sure you're in alignment with your sense of purpose and legacy, that's where all of that begins. It begins, your purpose is you.
As leaders, I think doing the work yourself, number one, being in self-leadership, and then meeting your people where they're at and really caring about helping them, and then being authentic and sharing your mission, right? Because not a lot of leaders will say the things that maybe, you have to be vulnerable. I'm okay with that. But being able to open up space for my people and give them just a hand that they need to rest on, so I can prop them up for a few more weeks, and then they come back with some homework they've done, and then we walk through it again, and then we just keep building. It's not like, it's not a sprint, right? It's really kind of like we're just kind of working on this, but being able to, rep it out and be able to like give them a little bit every day, is super important. And I think it's a big part of leadership. And I think a lot of leaders overlook that.
You're supposed to have these types of disruptive experiences show up for you because it's awakening your awareness. It's supposed to get you curious in terms of why all of this is starting to fall apart and unravel. Yeah, so I think it's really important to understand that's why this stuff is so deeply entrenched that we could be this unconscious to why our brain is feeling the way it's feeling right now, or why our brain feels the need to continue to make autopilot decisions in the same way we've always been hardwired to do since we were 10 years old. Or maybe even since we went through our schooling years and we had teachers and professors who were saying, you're great at math, you should be a mathematician, or you really suck at drawing, you should never do the creative field, or there's no money to be had in the creative fields. Whatever you picked up along the way in that gauntlet, because we all did. The reality is, what the heck did all of those people know about your truth? What did all of those people know about what really lights you up and makes you feel like this when you're engaged in it, right? Ultimately, that's why your purpose starts with you, is because it's your responsibility to become the expert in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think we're trying to inspire our folks to realize that, pain, when leveraged in the right ways, can equal a significant gains, right? It can be a launch pad, in fact, for your purpose-driven legacy mission. And so let's talk a little bit about that, please. When you're trying to leverage that type of inspiration with your folks and help them see the abundance of possibilities rather than the scarcity of what's being taken away, what is it that you're using as a leader to help leverage that with your folks?
Yeah. And none of that is to say that, it was done, one and done. It was, for me, just a backstory of, it's not like I'm different than anybody else, but I think I was a very, dedicated client of yours that went through the actual door and did all the work for approximately 3 years, right? And I did it for a few reasons. One, for myself, to be happier as a mom in my life as an adult, but I also did it because I care about my people and I wanted to be a better leader. So being able to understand myself and lead myself, then can I help other people, right? But without doing that, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today. And so just want to, preface that it's not like I was born like that. I had my own journey that I had to uncover my own beliefs and get in my own self-leadership. And it's a continuous kind of growth that it's never done. It's just, I've done a lot. I feel like I'm at a very good place now. And now I feel like I can meet my people where they're at. So yeah, like I think it's really important as a leader is to be able to step into the space of being open to helping the corporation in this area. So for me, being open to doing interviews, to help, doing video clips around what I believe self-leadership looks like, and really encouraging our people to step up and be curious and make sure that they are being responsible for themselves and not depending on the external world to take care of their next steps or their next job, and especially in the corporate world, but also their own life and being part of the co-creation of their life, that they're actually the ones that are at the helm of that. So being able to get out there and be open about that and being authentic about it and being, I don't care really what other people think when it comes to this, because it's my belief and nobody's going to tell me what I believe. These are my beliefs and I'm not afraid to share them. And so being able to step into some of those rooms where you can actually share that authentically to help people, I think is really important. I also try to open up space on Coffee and Connects, and I try to, do mentoring with certain people that are open to feedback and really want to work on this. But that means that people need to be curious. And then it means that they need to be somewhat in self-leadership to even ask for help. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want to ask and they just sit with this uncertainty and just kind of hope that it goes away, or maybe feel sorry for themselves and don't know how to get, out there. But I encourage people to ask their leaders for support. Most leaders, I hope, carve out the time to support their people on this, right? Because I think it's super important when you're talking about creating high performing organizations, you need to have people in self leadership. You need to have people that know that they are in charge of their own destiny and that they are very clear on why they are there, right? And what is their mission and purpose in showing up in this world that we're in and the team that we're in. If you have people that are uncertain of that and are, leaning on the externals and always looking for the next challenge because that's how they actually feel empowered and seen and valued, it can be very disruptive for the team, right? So I think I spend a lot of time on, just stepping into that, even in my staff calls, sharing books. We developed a growth portal where, I have somebody that put a SharePoint together with all the books and the podcasts and all kinds of trainings that they can go and explore. The other thing is bringing this kind of like mindset training into the corporate world is so important, right? I did it on my own personal time, and that's fine. And I funded it myself, which was, I wouldn't change any of that. But to be able to offer that to my people, because I've seen the value of being able to change the way I see the world, is a gift we can give our people, right? And I want to create those high performing teams. So I believe it's super critical for us to do that work. It does not just going to happen on its own. But yes, there is some things that we can do that will help people get curious about it. But as leaders, our responsibility is to take care of our people and to help them develop and to give them the stepping stones and remove roadblocks. It's not just about execution. It's about coaching. And that's why, it was important for me to get into that space of being able to help my people on a coaching side, which you've helped me with as well. I've done other trainings with you as well, where, I've focused on coaching, and so that I can be a better leader, not because I want to become a one-on-one coach anywhere outside of my work, but just to be able to help my people. So as leaders, I think doing the work yourself, number one, being in self-leadership, and then meeting your people where they're at and really caring about helping them, and then being authentic and sharing your mission with them, right? Because not a lot of leaders will say the things that maybe, you have to be vulnerable. I'm okay with that. But being able to open up space for my people and give them just a hand that they need to rest on, so I can prop them up for a few more weeks, and then they come back with some homework they've done, and then we walk through it again, and then we just keep building. It's not like, it's not a sprint, right? It's really kind of like we're just kind of working on this, but being able to, rep it out and be able to like give them a little bit every day is super important. And it's a big part of leadership. And I think a lot of leaders overlook that. We get really, really focused on delivering to the corporation. And yes, that is absolutely important. But leadership means more than that. Leadership means you're also there to care about your people and to rise and lift them and bring them up and support them.
Well, those are going to be the organizations that not only play through the disruption, but capitalize on it, right? Or the organizations with that mindset, which clearly your organization does in spades. We've been in there 5 years in a row doing this work in the trenches with your leaders. And to be honest, that's why a lot of these big companies that I'm partnering with right now are bringing me in to do these talks with their senior leaders, right? Because they know that, first of all, leadership requires coaching in 2025, in case we haven't noticed, right? Like, this is how we maximize the rate of growth for our people, our teams, and thus our organizations, right? So I think that just kudos to all my conscious leaders out there who are really being proactive. Like we just said, that is best case scenarios, getting those resources injected upstream, right? It's just like sports. We did a ton of training before we knew we were amping up to meet the pressures. That's what helps us step into our flow, is when we're resourced up by our leaders in that way. And I think it all starts with self-leadership. So of course it had to start there with you too. The model carries the most weight. And This is why you have built so much capacity in and around your influence, right? Is you've built up so much ability to show up authentically and vulnerably in the storm. And who do you think these people are going to be trusting when their amygdalas are jacked up? They're going to be trusting those leaders who have taken the time to have that type of human-centric approach with their development. Um, but that is to me, that's the TSN turning point, right? Is like,
Mm-hmm.
how many leaders do you have in your organization that actually have that capacity and can help meet these people where they're starting to buckle and go down the rabbit hole? We can start to talk about driving results all day, okay? But if we are here in the first part of this conversation, if our people's mindsets are hardwired to need to control externals like results and delivering results no matter what, and that's getting harder to deliver on, what do you think that's doing to your people's capacity to sustain delivering on those results, right? I think it's like why we talk about emotional intelligence so much. It predicts 80% of how much potential is going to see that ice in any high performance context with high pressure and high stakes. That is predictable. And that's why we want to come home to the helm as the authority in our self-leadership, because where we can start to challenge all of those extrinsic motivations based on the things that we cannot control and therefore shouldn't even be trying to, whether we're in a storm or not, that's anti-resilience, that's anti-adaptability, right? We want to come home to the pocket where the authenticity lives, where the sense of truth lives, because where our values are oriented in and around that intrinsic sense of what is most meaningful and important to us, that is something we can always access, whether in a storm or not. That's something that's always in our control and therefore keeps us in that sustainable, resourceful capacity, right? To recognize where there are possibilities opening up or opportunities for growth. And yes, possibilities maybe to start to learn some new things. That's what we keep using the word curious because that's what helps us stay grounded at the helm, right? As we're starting to explore, is this my value or is this something I picked up along the way? And if it's not, maybe I should let that go. If it's not serving me, maybe I should let that go. And if I let that go, what is my value instead? What is more important to me in terms of what really lights me up, right? Like for me, I can trust myself to navigate any disruption because I know who I am. I know what lights me up. And as long as I stay in alignment with that, making my decisions of where I invest my time, energy, and focus in and around where I'm going to feel like this and still be in my flow, there's a predictability to that, right? This is why we say the high performance mindset is based on a growth mindset because you no longer are trying to control the outcomes like a high achiever in a fixed mindset. You're now just owning the process. You're just owning the process in terms of how you show up, right? Matt Zeman talked about that in his interview. It's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. It's the quality of how I can show up and start to interface with whatever is showing up for me in this disruption. And ultimately, yeah, there's predictability to that because if it's in alignment with my sweet spot, right? The things that I am naturally most gifted at, my talents, my skills, my strengths, my attributes, the things that were put in me for a reason on purpose, and then pointing those towards the things that I value that I know I can control. Like for me and you, we value growth.
Yeah.
That's why we do these podcasts, right? It's like why we continue to find opportunities to continue to grow even when things are changing around us is because we know who we are and we know how to GPS that. We know how to govern decisions in alignment with our sense of purpose, which is informed by our sweet spot.
So on that note, because I know we're going to wrap up soon, let's leave our guests with a little bit of homework to do on how would they start
Great idea.
that mission of owning and knowing what lights us up, right? How can they go and explore that?
I think I want to expand on, we say we meet our people where they're at. We put our finger on the pulse. That's where you start. It starts with the emotional intelligence. We just said that predicts 80% of what is actually going to see the ice potential wise. in this disruption, in this storm. And so if we can get curious, that activates our conscious mind, right? And then we can start to really just explore and unpack, like, why am I feeling so stressed about this? Is it because I no longer can achieve, this thing that I thought I'd be doing for the rest of my life in perpetuity perfectly? Is that being taken away from me? Is AI coming in and taking that off of my plate? Oh my gosh, who am I going to be in this lifetime? If I feel anxious about that, I need to unpack the meaning, the backstory behind that in terms of what I think all of that means, which is going to explain why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. And I want us to also remember, if these are extrinsic values, yeah, ultimately, this is most often how you're going to be able to isolate and identify where your brain is hardwired into a limited belief that is valuing the wrong things, that things that are not in alignment with your sense of truth. And this magical thing happens when you get curious and pull it into the light of your conscious awareness, especially if it's from pre-10 years old or some hockey coach along the way throwing water bottles at your head. This is like the fun part, I think, of this exercise is like once you actually excavate all of that crap, you oftentimes can dismiss that relatively easily as an adult, as the authority who knows, like, that is not true about me. I continue to strive to hit these perfect markers, and I'm not often feeling that great. Like I always say, the way we invest time, energy, and focus tells us everything about our values. But if we're not feeling all of those core desired feelings in exchange for that time, energy, and focus, you're out of alignment. That's not your value. That's the world's value. And so that's the work I want our people to do, is just get curious and conscious with it. Let's pull out all the backstories behind these red flags that are erupting like landmines in your experience right now. And let's question the value system that is really hiding out and embedded in that belief system, in that perspective. And then I want you to come back to your sense of what is true about you. And I want you to question, what is the belief system that you need to really step into and own responsibly so you can be powerfully responsible? What is actually true about that situation? I want you to get up in the box with it, get out of that limited perspective, and I want you to actually really start to challenge what is actually true about what is actually important to you. And please, 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 if you've never done this type of values clarification excavation before, you crawl before you walk, before you run, before you sprint. Please don't expect yourself to be an expert the first time you do it, but stay curious, right? Stay curiously discerning every time you pull this stuff out. Stay curious in terms of, well, maybe I don't know what my actual core belief is in regards to what is actually the value driving this bus for me authentically. But maybe I'm just going to start to notice the things that light me up. Maybe I'm just going to start to notice the things that I always feel called towards or want to gravitate towards. And here's the hint. If that choice in terms of investing your time, energy, and focus towards those things, or these things like Tracey and I are doing right now, and you feel like this, you feel expanded, open, resourceful, energized, it's a pretty good clue that your nervous system is feeding back to you in regards to the fact that that probably is pretty important to you at your core. That probably is one of your core values. So just keep a little list next to you on your desk. That's what I tell my clients to do. And just start to bank some of those clues, bank some of that intel. Emotions, we said, are intel. It's all data.
Yeah.
And then you can really, you can then start to play with consciously starting to reorient your decision making more and more towards those things. I think this will help a lot of people getting disrupted in their career paths right now.
I love that. That is great.
So
So important.
that is some of the inspo that we wanted to bring to our folks today, right, Trace? We're really feeling this call because as much as we were predicting it as intuitive empaths, feeling it coming, feeling it is here, it is ripe, it is real. And so there's never been a more important time for us all to really get consciously at this helm and really start to work with that energy, like you said a second ago. This is why we talk about co-creation as being the conscious leadership way, right? Is in every storm and every disruption, it can really be a launch pad for that next level. It really can, but it requires that you cultivate the right mindset so that you actually can find these opportunities for growth that are happening for you, probably all around you right about now. Any final thoughts for our folks before we say adieu?
No, I think that's great. I think it's a lot for people to think about. I think, like you said, this is something that you and I are super excited about. And I know for a fact, for me, it's changed the way that I see the world. And I believe when you start seeing the world differently, things look different. So if I can help other people with that, that's why we do the work that we're doing right now on this pod, is to help other people. So please, if it resonates with you and you're curious and you want to do a little bit of work, do the work, and you'll see, and you can reach out to me or Susan for any kind of support, and especially my corporate friends, any support that I can give, please reach out. I'm happy to help share what my experience has been and how I can show up as a better leader for my people. If anybody has any questions on how that was done, I'm happy to share that as well.
Yay. Thank you so much for your generosity and heart of service. I think this is definitely the call all of us conscious leaders are hearing right about now. This is our opportunity to change the way this game's being played. I love, as a visionary, to imagine the possibilities on the other side of this disruption, in terms of if we all start to really step to this, how less than 1/3 of adults are currently in this stage of the maturation process known as self-authorization. That means like 2/3 of adults are not yet seeing themselves as adults that should be at the helm. And so imagine the opportunity to awaken the collective consciousness happening right about now. This is why we're smiling, not because we're masochists, but because we actually embody everything we've been talking about today in terms of seeing the opportunities buried in this adversity right now. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Remember, we too are in the year of co-creation. Send us that feedback. How is this hitting the mark? Is it hitting the mark? Is there anything else that is really coming up for you right now that we can show up in service to, especially when we're on these one-on-one riffs? We want to hear from you. Please, for all other curiosity in and around how we can show up in service to what's going on with you or your teams or even your organization right now, please head on over to the website, elitehighperformance.com. Like I said, I'm getting the call left, right, and center right now to come in and really support these high-performing teams, and I am here for it. This is why this is my life's work. I've been training for this for the last 20 years to show up in service to this great cataclysmic awakening moment in leadership. That's it. That's all. Hit like, hit subscribe, share this episode with a friend as far and wide as you can. Help us share this ripple effect as far and wide as we can when the world needs this type of conscious leadership more than ever. We'll see you all next week.